All right. Hey, welcome back to the Basketball Academy. We're really excited for what we have in store today. We have with us the illustrious, the givers of the game, Slappin Glass. And we have Coach Patrick Carney here, who, Pat, one of the best players all time at Chapman University. He's one of the top leading scorers in the program, and then continued to play in Germany for over a decade after that, where he currently resides and coaches at that level. And then we also have Coach K, or Coach Dan Krikorian, who's almost a decade as the associate head coach at Chapman University, where he also played. And then Dan, as well as coaching, he's also a professor at Chapman and is also a highly decorated musician. Excited to dive in, guys. Appreciate you guys being here.
Wow, I don't know if we can follow that up.
Yeah,
That
yeah, I know. You did some digging to find those.
yeah,
I'm a hooper that digs. That's
Yeah,
time. Hey,
appreciate it.
appreciate you guys taking time. Seriously.
yeah. No, we're excited to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah. So first question, I think we'll start here and jump off is, a lot of people that follow our newsletter are hoop junkies as well. And you guys have been not only a great sharer of the game, but a cultivator of these great talks from coaches. For you guys, whether it's your lens coach at Chapman or coach your lens over professionally in Germany, how do you take some of the stuff that other great teachers will give you and then put that through your filter to give to your players? Because it's impossible to give them everything that you're taught. What's in place to pick and choose what you like best?
Yeah. You want me to
Go ahead, Dan.
take it first,
Yeah.
Pat? Sure.
Yeah.
So I think, and this is a great question, and Pat and I ourselves talk about all the time, because the joy of what we do is we're getting tons and tons of great ideas coming at us daily from all over the world, and it's an amazing place to be for both of us. But then when we both go to our separate teams, how do you think about what will work, what won't, all those kinds of things? And I think that one of the takeaways from the podcasts that I always love is these great coaches understand their own players and themselves as a coach really well. And so they love to hear ideas, but then they also have this kind of growing filter in understanding, okay, I like it, but it's maybe not perfect for my team, but it's somewhere in the clunking around in the back of your brain for maybe some time down the road. And so I think that, for me personally at our level, really high level D3 level here in Southern California, there's certain leagues in Europe, especially for me, that I think translate well to our level as far as the actions, the movement, the play style, the coach style that, Germany, for instance, just to kick it to Pat here in a second, but I love watching Germany. There's a lot of things taking from that league that I think translate to what our guys can do at a somewhat of a level, not the same level as them, but they can do. And so, love to watch the NBA, love to watch other levels for sure. And there's little nuggets that you can take. But like for me, it's kind of filtering actions, leagues, and coaches into what we're going to do in our style play.
Yeah. For me, I think it's all about starting simple, and basically just understanding who your team is and what spacings you want to play out of, and starting from there. I mean, everything's going to break down into some sort of drive off of a pick and roll, off of an isolation, off of a post, maybe some sort of, how are we going to generate paint touches? What kind of spacings do we want to play out of it? And once we get comfortable from there, then we can start with the layering, the actions, adding concepts. But for me, it was important to me, just let's start simple, start with the basics that apply pretty much are universal, more or less. And then from there, it's nice to have now all these resources that as I start to learn my team, we start to, add throughout the season. We can go to these different actions, these different concepts that maybe get a little bit more involved or complex or, added layers. But definitely from the start, it's keeping it simple, not getting, the carriage in front of the horse type deal.
100%. And I think you hit on that perfectly, Pat. I think my mentor always says simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, and the ability to explain a very tough concept simply is the mark of a high level thinker. And so to build off that, I agree, watching a lot of Chapman on Synergy, you guys play in great shapes and affordances. Your spacing is always so good. How are both of you able to take things that you're taught, resonate on it a little bit, and then simplify it for them? Is that small-sided game stuff? Is that the usage of film? What have you found best for your process?
Yeah, and it's a good point. And I think basically all the things you just said are really good things to use. And we do a variety of things like that. We do still do I know sometimes, saying it, but 5-on-0, we still will do some 5-on-0 to teach the spacing to get into that stuff. But then we do a lot of small-sided type games. We do a lot of advantage, disadvantage stuff to just constantly be teaching that. And to your point, and Pat and I talk about this all the time, teaching how to not just space, but the respacing is I think the most important thing in offense, because after you make a cut or a pass or two, the spacing will get off a little bit, and it's constantly teaching guys how to get back to realignment, how to reignite the offense through certain actions. And I would say we spend the bulk of our teaching time on that aspect alone, so that we can continue to play through, the whole 30 seconds.
Yeah. I love how you said teaching how to play. And what I've seen a lot of teams, I coach a lot in the youth level, and we do is what the NBA was doing maybe like 3-4 years ago, because I believe how when it starts in the NBA, then it trickles down to college and it trickles down to high school. So with you guys overseas in D3, when do you see it trickle down to your level? When are you starting to watch, like, here's how the NBA is playing now we got to attack it like this?
Go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and Dan, I mean, I've been in Europe now for the last 15 years. So I think just because of the nature of the rules and of course the athleticism, skill level of these NBA guys, it doesn't trickle so much into Europe. I mean, I think we're watching the top teams, whether it's, I think a lot probably trickles out of Spain, to be perfectly honest. Like what they do, they always seem to be more, I mean, they're, I don't know, more creative on the forefront. I mean, especially with pace and trends and tactics. So for me on my end over here, I think it a lot comes from Spain. I just think with the FIBA rules, everyone's more looking towards international play over here. It translates better. I mean, and with that being said, I think, college coaches as well, if they're doing some unique things, they'll pay it has a better translation. Whereas I think, the NBA is just unique in their style and in especially the rules and how they want to play the game that, internationally, I mean, and that's not, I mean, of course there are going to be some things, but I would say more so looking at Spain and EuroLeague and high end, as far as when, with our club here in second league Germany and what we're trying to learn from.
I'll just say real fast, the NBA is particularly good at matchup stuff and creating matchup problems and, certain times stealing. Okay. Really like how they're figuring out that mismatch problem, or they have so much data on coverage schemes or things like that it's interesting to look at why everybody's playing drop and then why it switches. Like, there are, I think, like a lot of interesting things there, but I kind of agree with Pat, for at least for our level, with not being able to pack the paint in the NBA like we can here at college and, really sag off shooters or whatever it is that you're going to do, we're always trying to find different ways to create that space where the NBA kind of, you get more natural space because of the 3-second defensive rule at times.
Yeah.
100%.
And
go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. I will say, the more as I start to think too, like the NBA does really well 5-out offense. And I think that has trickled into every part of the game, especially like the delays. So you will see that in Europe. And I got to give credit there, I think, learning from the NBA teams as far as just the actions they're running and how they teach and play 5-out is starting to infiltrate, I think, all levels of the game.
100%. Yeah, I think you look at what Herbert's running for the German national team, with Sergio runs in Spain. Like that stuff is, to me, like that is the precursor that flows to the NBA level, and it flows from so on and so forth. And so I guess my next question for you guys, being hoop junkies, playing collegiately and playing so well, do you find yourself at times when you're in the space of your players, they may not care about it as much as you do, or they care in a different way? And how are you able to bridge that gap of, hey, you care about this thing, we care maybe a little differently. I'm going to impart wisdom, but from a different style, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Pat, you want to go or you want me to take it?
I can go. I mean, I think with the team I'm at now, and I mean, I think Dan can maybe speak better on it, because I've been lucky enough. I came over to Europe and been surrounded by professionals and people who are trying, like myself at the time, and now want to advance their careers. So I think they're all taking it very serious. It's different levels of love, let's say. Of course, maybe they're not watching film as crazily as we are, but I think, you know, how they approach their craft and try to get better is, very, it's different degrees, let's say. So I've been fortunate enough, and it makes it obviously a pleasure to coach when, you know, we're at a level where guys want to get better, especially we're in the second league. So everyone's trying to advance their career and get onto maybe a better club, higher level, bigger contract, whatnot. So I've been fortunate that it makes my job a little bit easier at times. You know, we don't have to really question their will or desire. They want to be here. And that, I think, is a big part of the battle at times. Probably, Dan, maybe you can speak on too, with guys that have been doing college and it's amateur and you got classes too.
Totally.
Yeah. I think that just the nature of coaches and players, I mean, players get over things probably a lot faster. I mean, after a tough loss, players go out to in and out after and have, you know, a good time with their buddies, and we're up all night till 2 a.m. still thinking about it. I think that's one big difference. But I think one of the big jobs of a coach is to find the shared goals that we both care deeply about, and we're just going to come at it from different ways. So the players care, you know, we both care about winning, we both care about playing a certain way. And as a coach, these are the things that are really important to me to get to there. And for a player, you know, they feel it out a different way. You know, Pat was obviously a player much more recent than myself, but I think as a coach, you're trying to figure out what is really driving those players and how you can help them kind of get to those shared values. But, you know, players, especially, well, like Pat said, at our level, the college level, you know, they're not thinking about this stuff nearly as much as we are. You know, they're going to class, they're hanging out with their buddies, you know, it's not all consuming for the most part. Maybe one or two here or there, but not really.
Yeah. Yeah. And with that too, I think like with your guys' coaching style, we've said it with a couple people that we've had on, but I think clarity creates consistency, meaning clarity of coaching creates consistency of play, or whether that's role definition for your players. But for you guys, how would you finish this sentence? So the sentence is, I'm at my best when I am blank. So for you as a coach, like, how do you get into the flow? When are you operating on all cylinders?
Yeah, I can start on this one. And I think it's a really good question. And I'll get to my answer eventually. But
yeah,
one of my favorite interviews that we've done so far this year is with Owen Eastwood. Owen Eastwood is a high performance coach, not a basketball coach. But we had a great conversation about roles, hierarchy, you know, how groups come together. It's been one of the more popular ones this year because it really hit on something. And I think a lot of what he said is the environment. You think all the time about the environment that you teach and put players in is going to have so much to do with how they feel, how they interact, how you interact. And so, you know, within that, and to your question, I think that I feel most in my flow when I've done my prep work as a person on and off the court with all of our guys, so that when we get on the court, I just feel like there's no friction between myself and the players from an emotional coach to player standpoint. And then I've done all my homework to basically have all the answers prepared for whatever questions, and trying to just, you know, help them in whatever way possible. And I think that when I feel that, whether or not the shot goes in or we win the game, I feel good because we're kind of connected in all those things. And so I think about like my own environment I create every day, coach to player relationship wise, and then just myself personally and with our staff being prepped, gets me into some sort of flow state as a coach.
Really well said.
There's probably going to be a lot of synergy between me and Dan. Hang out so much and talk so much about this, but I mean, the first thing was, like preparedness, preparation. But then I think the next part of it or piece of it, and what Dan said too, is like just knowing that if I've cultivated the relationship with my players, so I'm able to understand how I can coach them and not be worried about coaching them in terms of like, if I jump, like knowing who I can jump, who needs a little bit softer touch, and knowing that I can, in the heat of the moment of the battle of the game, like I can come to them with a correction or get their opinion on stuff. I think that also helps get the flow state, because it's a game of errors, as we all know. And I mean, I'm going to make mistakes. Our players are going to make mistakes, and we're going to make it in front of a bunch of people. And so I think having, again, that environment, that relationship to be vulnerable with one another in these moments and know that we're all, I mean, I always, in a game, we're all after the same thing, is like whatever it takes to win this game. And so as long as we can be collaborative and trying to find the solution. Dan, who was it that we just had on? Like, there's always a way to win a game. Sometimes you, of course, run out of time, but there's always a way. And so I think with preparation and building the environment with these relationship with your players is kind of, I guess, when I would say I feel like I'm at my best.
Yeah.
The coaching flow.
Or you're at your best when Dan's at his best. I get it. That's
yeah,
great.
exactly.
That's right.
Nice.
I just got to follow them.
Yeah, it's in going with that, like you don't always have to have an agreement with even like your coaching staff. Like you're gonna disagree on some things, but it's really important that you have alignment with you, your coaching staff, and your players. How do you guys get to that process, even in your preparation?
100%. I mean, we talk about this. Conflict is good in a group. I mean, I think certain healthy levels of conflict help kind of breed competition, help bring out the best in people. It's just, do you have the underlying, like you mentioned, do you have the underlying foundation set so that when that conflict takes place, you're able to move on from it, learn from it, grow from it, rather than, the unhealthy conflict where it creates divides and separation and all sorts of problems that I'm sure we've been a part of on teams before. And I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, you're not blowing up and you're going to be on ESPN like these D3 coaches were blowing up at each other.
Yeah, exactly.
For running the wrong blob.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Definitely. And then for me, I mean, like I said, I go back, relationships off the court. I think putting competition in practice so you can learn how your guys react to failure, struggle, and learning from that. And then if I put in the effort or make the effort that I'm there to get them better, and whether it's film, individuals, but just putting in the effort on the court to try to help these guys, not only as a team, but in their individual, whatever goals, career path, career development they want. I think like those three components kind of then help us. So when we're in a game, like we've been through it before in practice, like they trust me because they've seen the work I'm putting in for them. And then we have the relationship again. So I know how to communicate with them. We can maybe raise our voices at one another, but it's not going to carry over past this moment. And we're going to be better for it, hopefully in the long run.
I think that's well said. I was really lucky. I played for I call him a guru, one of my first college coaches, but his line was, we will be confrontational, but we won't be disrespectful. Meaning we'll be maniacal when we drive, we'll be combative when we play, but then when the whistle blows, we're civil, hopefully.
That's right.
And that brings me to this idea. Like, I think you guys understand this because this is a big hoops junkie platform. So like for you guys watching so much film all the time, you start to develop pattern recognition, whether you know it or not. How many times or does this happen where you're watching either another team play or a random game and without even thinking, immediately what they're in? And is that like, even, it's a Bilbao variation or something, it served you at all? Or has that actually done more damage, being the only one who knows?
No, I mean, I think it's for sure served us. Yeah. I mean, I think you start to recognize like formations, patterns. I mean, right. The clearest example is when you see like they start getting a Zipper or an Iverson and it just, yeah. I mean, I think at times, especially with scouting, it's making sure I don't turn my mind off too much when I see these things and continue to keep focus. But I would say for sure, it's obviously served me, helped me. And then in a game and preparing, like, I think, yeah, you do pick up on things a little bit quicker. You've developed kind of that eye to start seeing where things may or may go. But like you said, of course, then it's what little wrinkle or tweak at the end have they adapted, changed.
And and I agree 100% with Pat's point. I think it's only been a good thing. Yeah. I think that what is super helpful about it is from, say, a scouting standpoint, or when you're watching your own team's film and you just kind of can tell when something's a little bit off and maybe where to start tweaking. But I think for us now is like, say content creators and all that, you do then recognize when somebody's doing something really interesting, because then you have these sort of working schemes and models constantly in your brain. And then all of a sudden you see something where instead of making the cut from the corner, they cut from somewhere else. You go, oh, okay. Right. And then let's dig into that. Let's go to the film and figure out why they're doing that. And then that's, I think, those are the fun wormholes for Pat and I to find. And then if we ever get a chance to get that coach on the podcast, just hammer them for an hour about why they do that.
That's so good. Yeah. And I think with that too, I think you might have said this, Dan, but you were saying like you like to pull from football coaches. And I did the same, like especially offensive coordinators. Right now, like Mike McDaniel's been kind of like my favorite, how he gets people in motion earlier. And with that, for both of you, I think as teachers, there are habits of mind that dance across disciplines. So whether that's you and your music stuff, Dan, whether Pat, that's you and your non-basketball stuff, how do you take things non-basketball related and put that into your teaching style or your coaching?
Yeah, I can hop on this one first. And yeah, you mentioned Mike McDaniel is a great one right now with the Dolphins. I mean, I think I could catch a pass in his offense and be open right now with how open those receivers are that he gets them. But the way my mind works, I love to pull from all sorts of stuff. I mean, Mitch, I am a musician, so there's a lot of things that, I see a lot of similarities in how you put songs together with a band and adding layers and starting with the bass. And I love that stuff. Obviously we're, entrepreneurs as well. We're studying how great businesses grow and have foundations and add stuff. I think it really is all the same thing. And then so when you go back to your team, it's like, well, what are our foundations? What are our structures? What do we believe in? Just like anything. And then how do you kind of add and layer those things on top? And just to put a bow on it, football is one of my favorites to watch because it's so much about getting guys into space who have an advantage. Nice. And the NFL, that's the game. If you're able to, put your best players in space with maybe a slight step advantage or a mismatch, that's the game for the most part. And I think, how does that translate to basketball? How do we get our best players in space and things like that? So I'm with you. Love watching football. I think it's a great place to steal from.
For sure.
Yeah. I think we're fortunate to have a podcast because of when we want to learn about something, we can just go ahead and try to get an interview out of it and get some content and learn. And so for me, it's been the conversations. Dan mentioned it. We had Owen Eastwood on who talked about belonging and culture. We had a really good podcast a year and a half ago, maybe more, with Gio Valiente, Dr. Gio Valiente about sports performance coach. And we recently had on the Pirates, the mental skills coach. So like, I think for me, what's been interesting in these conversations that I pull a lot from is, I think, of course, like getting in the mindset of how mental performance, like what the roots are behind it, like what influences the mental state of a player. I think like decision making, we've been doing a lot with these Titans podcasts where we're looking more at like businesses. And I think that's what always, when me and Dan kind of prepare for those things, we're always thinking, critical decisions, how they view decisions, of course, how they, let's say, build out their team and their business. And I think all that stuff is really universal and you can take away and apply to your team. And so for me, it's been kind of a real advantage, of course, to have this pod and have the freedom to then go ahead and chase these rabbit holes that me and Dan are interested in, with pursuing some great conversations with other coaches outside of the game or business leaders.
Yeah, you guys use it well.
Yeah, and you guys have had some incredible guests, and like you just said, like you try and steal from them. So what are like some of the top like intangible stuff or tangible stuff that you've taken away from your top coaches or even people that you've been on the pod?
Pat, you want to go first?
Hard question. Yeah.
I can take it. I'll take it first, Pat. I'll let you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of my favorite like quick little teaching points that stuck with me a lot going into this season was we had head of Australia basketball coaching, Peter Lonergan, on the show, and he talked about the power of 3 in your coaching and chunking things down for players into 3s, and whether that's teaching an offense and, hey, 3 things today to teach, or whatever it is. I've taken that quite a bit just from like a teaching standpoint. And just to add on top of that with Lonergan's, I guess, thoughts, the thing that I always come away with, the intangible from these great guests on the show, is just how they think about the game. There's like a humility built into their mindset that I think is really interesting. Like the greatest coaches in the world are like often the most afraid of that they're wrong all the time, and they're constantly trying to find the answers. They're super curious about themselves and their team. And I think that, that mindset of, I don't have all the answers. I'm not, the gift to basketball myself, but I'm constantly searching, I think is an intangible that then flows into your team. Because when your head coach everyone knows your head coach is great and they're helping you and there's the relationships and they're curious to try to find the answers to win. That just, I think, permeates the locker room when that's kind of at the forefront. And I've taken that a lot from a lot of our guests.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I think I'll try to be as on point as I can. I mean, there's so much at times, but like broadly, I think for me, anytime a coach and their vocabulary and how you mentioned like the simplicity in teaching, and a lot of that I think is built around their vocabulary. So, I'm always writing down when we start getting tactical or whatever technique and just stealing vocabulary, ways that they use to help their guys learn, I think has been a big takeaway for me. I talked about, we had Andy Bass on, a mental skill coach. So at the time of this recording, it hasn't come out yet, but we talked a lot about communication and like our feedback and how as coaches, like it can help and hinder at times. And for me, that's a big topic for me right now in our season, and think about, especially as an assistant coach role, like how I choose my words and how I try to help my players. So of the most recent, like that conversation on just thinking about feedback and communication has been big. And then of course that fits into the vocabulary and teaching. I think there's a big growing field with all this constraints-led approach and how skill acquisition, which me and Dan are really interested in right now and kind of picking at. And we've been fortunate enough to really develop a good relationship with the Pro Lane, and we had them on the podcast and have done a lot of work on our newsletter and SG Plus platform, and they've really helped me a lot just in basically giving me a layman's approach to all that stuff and how to apply it. And that's, I think, helped my coaching overall, and I think help hopefully my players. We'll see. But without me starting to wander too much around, just if I just think of a coach, I'll have another topic to go off of. But those are the things that really stood out to me, especially this early in this season for me, and what I'm thinking about and been applying and using a lot.
Man, I love it. Guys, we really appreciate your time as well. Before we hop out, where can guys follow you, plug whatever you need to be plugged? A lot of our followers already, are obsessed with your stuff, but please, man, we'd love for you guys to share where to follow you.
Well, first of all, before we end, I thank you guys for having us on. It's always an honor to come and talk hoops, and we appreciate you guys reaching out and thinking of us. So this was really fun for Pat and I to hop on here. So first, thank you guys very much. And, we respect what you're doing and what you're building too. Like I said, your newsletter is awesome. I'm on it. So thank you for that service as well. I think that, we have the Slappin Glass podcast. They can find a lot of our stuff. If you go to slappinglass.com, we have all the links to our Twitter or X, whatever it's called now, our podcast, and then our Sunday morning newsletter. So if you go to our website, you can sign up for our newsletter. And from there, we have tons and tons of weekly content stuff from there as well. Pat, did I miss anything?
No, yeah, you got it. Every Friday we're coming out with a new podcast. And I know for me and Dan, we know how time consuming and hard it is to put together these podcasts and these newsletters. And so we appreciate you guys as well and helping the game grow too. It's not lost on us by any means.
Appreciate it. Yeah, and I can't speak high enough about you guys' deep dive breakdowns as well. There's so much attentionality there. You guys did an incredible job. So appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Of course, man. Well, thank you guys for the time. And hey, good luck this season to you guys, man. I love how excited you look before season starts. So it's gonna
be yeah.
Come back in a couple months.
Haggard and non-sleep.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, appreciate you guys.
All right.
Thank you so much. Great to meet you guys.
Yeah,
too.
we'll be in touch.
Yep.
Good job.